It's time for the Hockey Writers Grindline, a weekly show covering everything Detroit Red Wings. Brought to you by our own iconic top line of Wings writers. Sit back and enjoy The Grind.
Welcome to the Hockey Writers Grindline. I'm Patrick Brown, your host and proud Iowa State alum, Go Cyclones, and we are thrilled to have you watching our humble show. For the past 5 years, you've caught our column on the Hockey Writers, and now we're here with you to discuss the latest Red Wings news, rumors, and strategy. In a rarity for this show, we are at full strength. And that's right. Even though Tony Wolak is somewhere trying to continue his arbitration efforts between Steve Yzerman and Jeff Blashill, we have a very special guest with us today. So let's introduce our crew of experts, starting with that special guest. Joining us today, managing editor of Access Hockey MI, Rachel Anderson. Rachel, how are you?
I am very well. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the invite.
Glad to have you on. So now let's get to the usual suspects here, starting with TGL first team all-star Devin Little. Devin, how are you today?
I'm doing good now that I found out I'm a first team all-star. I was thinking second team at best. Holy cow. Good to be with all of you. Happy to have you, Rachel.
Thanks, Devin. And moving over, we've got Kyle Knopp. Kyle, you just got done serving your too many men on the ice penalty. So welcome back. We missed you last week. How you doing?
Great to be back. Thank you for having me again, and excited to kick this weekend off with you.
Awesome. Well, let's dive right in. You know, we like to start our show with one good, one bad, and I think we can all agree something bad. The season's over. And what a bummer that the season's over. There wasn't much of a week that was a split series with Columbus last weekend to wrap up the season. Overtime loss to kind of end it. Kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth, but is what it is. Can start looking forward to the NHL playoffs and then obviously the offseason on to next year. So let's start with one good, one bad from the last week. Devin, I want to start with you. What you got?
So my one good is that, kind of as you just alluded to, the playoffs start tomorrow, and I'm excited about it. I know the Wings aren't in it, but there's reason to be excited about the playoffs. It's playoff hockey. And then my one bad is that the Red Wings still haven't said anything about the future of Jeff Blashill, and some of us out there might have an article kind of lingering in the void, depending on the news. So looking forward to hearing from you, Stevie Y.
Well, what we can say, Devin, if history is any indication, we knocked the power play and then they started scoring power play goals. We knocked the penalty kill and then they started killing off penalties. So maybe now we get a decision after the show finishes taping. So
looking forward to that for tomorrow.
Kyle, what you got? One good, one bad for the week.
Yeah, so like Devin, my good is definitely that it's postseason time. I mean, this is the best time of the year, my favorite time of the year. And I'm excited. I think it's going to be, the first two rounds are going to be extra exciting with all the close matchups we've had this past year and the bad blood that's been kind of building up. And then, getting on to that third and fourth round when teams haven't seen each other all year. And it's going to be a lot of feeling out. So I'm really excited to see what this season, what it culminates to. And, we'll have Dean take that out there, but so I'm just really looking forward to the postseason and seeing what happens.
Good deal. Well, thanks for that, Kyle. Let's swing it over to Rachel. Rachel, end of the Wings season, one good, one bad. What did you take away from last week?
One good. We're not last.
That's a really good call out. I like
it. Yes.
Improvement. It might not be much right now, but it'll mean something one day. But one bad, it actually takes it back to the AHL because I cover not strictly, but mostly AHL. There is actually no playoffs for the AHL. They're all individual tournaments, and only the Pacific has decided to resume in doing that. So after tomorrow night, the Griffins are done. So I'm back to reading and sitting around doing nothing, waiting for them to kick in.
And that's the second straight year now there's been no Calder Cup winner, correct?
Yes. So it's a little depressing, but we'll muddle through somehow, right?
That's too bad. Little known fact, I was actually at the Chicago Wolves game. I believe it was 2008 when they won the Calder Cup. Calder Cup clinching game at Allstate Arena. A lot of fun. That was fun.
The Wolves
So
have been pretty good.
yeah, they've been fun to watch for sure.
Yeah, if you
So
don't play 'em all the time.
what did you say?
If you don't play them all the time like we do, they wear on you a little bit.
Well, I like how we've been dabbling in the AHL here a little bit because Rachel, we certainly want to tap into your expertise. So what I thought would be great to talk about today is kind of down on the farm, looking at the season that the Griffins had and understanding that it will very unfulfillingly come to a close with no playoffs in the next coming days. Let's talk about who on the Griffins. I want to talk about the good and the bad, and I'm going to switch it around. I'd like to start with the bad so we can finish on a high note. So let's talk about who on the Griffins has maybe disappointed or didn't quite live up to expectations this season, and I want to start with you on this.
For sure. Yeah. And I think disappointing, it's kind of a harsh term because this particular player I'm thinking of didn't really get too much of a fair shake, but I was really looking for more out of them this season. It'd be Albin Grube. So he was a 2019 draft pick. We just pulled him over from Sweden, and he had a pretty big reputation in Sweden for being a bit of a chippier player, aggressive, almost like a McCarty type, just kind of get in your face, kind of nasty. When we did pull him over, he's only played 11 games this whole season. He's had 2 points, so 1 goal, 1 assist. I saw both of them, which was awesome. But it seemed like he came out kind of shy, a lot shyer than I was expecting. He didn't push as hard, and it could be he is a smaller player, and the AHL is a much faster league than what he was accustomed to. The ice is smaller, so there's a lot of adjustments that he's had to make, and I just don't think I saw enough of him to really be impressed quite yet. I think this coming season I'm going to see a lot more, and we're all going to get a good taste for what he's capable of. But not necessarily disappointed in his play. It's disappointed in the fact that I didn't see much of him. I really had hoped he was going to get a bigger opportunity, but the way the roster worked this year, he just kind of got pushed out of the lineup. So just didn't see enough of him, I don't think.
And, I will say on numerous occasions in the comments section of a lot of our prospect articles, you see questions about him, about when you're going to start seeing him. So fans have been kind of chomping at the bit to see him take the ice for sure. Appreciate that, Rachel. Kyle, we'll swing it to you next. From a prospect perspective, maybe who didn't quite live up to the bill for you?
Yeah, so I'm going to agree with Rachel right off the bat and just say, I was kind of expecting a little bit more from Albin and just kind of getting used to the game, didn't quite see that transition there right at the beginning. And I think she hit the nail on the head with everything that, it's still a very small sample size, but the expectations and then the deliverance were just not there. The other player I thought maybe should have excelled a little more in the AHL or needed to excel a little more in the AHL this year. And I, almost want to put him on my improvement list, but he's not quite there. And I think he should have shown more, was Giovanni Smith. I think he's trying to find a spot in the NHL right now as a full-time player in the bottom 6, and he really needs to prove himself, especially at the AHL level, that he can dominate down there and then bring those tools up to the big league club. So I was expecting a little bit more out of him. I still love him. I hope he gets a lot more chances next year. I hope we don't lose him to Seattle, but I would say he was a little bit of a disappointment in Grand Rapids.
I agree with you. I love watching Smith on the ice and wish he would have been on the ice when Ben took Larkin out of the game, because I have a feeling he would have had something to say about that to our good friend Jamie Benn. So Devin, bring us home. Who has not quite lived up to your expectations this year?
So I'm going to kind of cheat here because I'm not saying that what they did this season with the Griffins was bad. In fact, they had a really good season with the Griffins. But the player I have in mind is Taro Hirose. And the reason why I say I'm disappointed is because I feel like he should have been given more opportunities to strut his stuff in the NHL. It's not what he did, it's what wasn't given to him. I'm kind of a big fan of his game. I think I understand the concerns that Detroit's management has with him, but I mean, you look at what he's done this season. He's lit up the AHL, and he's He's one of those pure playmakers from the wings. He went to Michigan State. There's all those little things where fans can get behind this kid, and the talent's there too. So I just, my bad thing is that we didn't see more of Taro Hirose in Detroit.
You know, I have to say that how everybody pretty much took a negative and turned it into a positive, where you want to see more opportunities. It's not necessarily poor play. You want to see more opportunities. And I really like what you guys did there. So let's spin it around and talk happy thoughts here. So Rachel, in your opinion, what you've seen this year in Grand Rapids, who has exceeded expectations, who's excelled this season?
I have been really, really happy with Donovan Sabrango. He, being as fresh as he is to the professional level, and this is his rookie season, he did not even miss a step when he came onto the ice. And he was paired with obviously a lot of veteran players. So for a while he's with Dylan McElrath, Brian Lashoff when his rights weren't traded away to Tampa. He was paired with a lot of those bigger guys, but he was not shy at all. He has a very opportunistic style, and that was not something that was lost in the AHL. So a lot of times, like we were just talking about with Elvin Grube, there was a little bit, they're different positions, of course, but there is still that transition period where there can be a little adjusting there and a little bit of a, I don't know, just a little bit of backpedaling where they're kind of second guessing themselves and not as confident. And Sabrango did not show any of that from what I saw. He's had 4 points in 29 games total, which, yeah, for a defenseman and a young one at that is not a ton. But his on-ice playmaking is really good, and he really tries to push the pace. He's really aggressive in a very good sort of way, not in a really reckless way. So I was really excited to see how he meshed with the team so well and how he really embraced his new role and that responsibility that was given to him.
If only we had the opportunity to see an even slightly bigger stage in the playoffs. It'd be fun to watch, right? But Kyle, over to you. Who has caught your attention down on the farm?
Yeah, so my sample size with the Grand Rapids Griffins has been kind of small this year. So I don't have a lot of depth to be able to pull from. But one player I've really kind of seen that I've liked his game has been Chase Pearson. He has 20 points, I believe, in the season, which was about 27 games. So just under a point per game, but second-year player and really kind of coming into his own. And so I've kind of, from the small sample size that I've seen of him, I've just really liked his game. And I'm excited to see, if he gets more opportunities down the road.
Good deal, Kyle. Good points. Devin, again, bring us on home in the AHL with the Griffins. Who's opened your eyes? Who's impressed you this season?
So I'm going to keep it brief because my player is Sabrango, like Rachel. I think it needs to be kind of repeated. This kid is 19 years old, and he did not look out of place in the AHL. Under normal circumstances, this kid wouldn't be in the AHL because he couldn't be in the AHL, and he's been there and he's looked good. This was the 3rd round pick, I believe, in the 2020 draft. And for him to already look good at the AHL level, that's got to give Hockeytown a lot to be excited about.
Rachel, I'm going to put you on the spot and go off script for a minute because, again, we have to tap into your expertise a little bit. And in terms of Sabrango, what does his progression look like from here on out? When might fans expect to see a little bit more of him? What do you think that looks like?
I love those questions because there's no easy answer.
That's why I ask them and don't answer them.
I'm going to answer this. So realistically, he's at an ELC right now, so an entry-level contract. Realistically, he's going to be at least 2 to 3 seasons, I think, before they pull him to see and try out, because the team that Yzerman is creating right now is a fast and a young team. Sabrango, being like what Devin said, he's only 19 years old. He could use another year or two to really get used to not only a full season with the travel, with the 70 plus, 80 plus games, but also a playoff run. So hopefully this next season he gets the chance to experience that. So I think they're really going to try see how consistently season over season under normal circumstances he performs, if it can be consistent. So I would say 2 to 3 seasons. They might give him, like a 5 to 10 game tryout sometime in there, but I don't think it's going to be full time for another couple of years.
Good stuff. Well, appreciate the insight. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't try to get a little more info, right? So
that's why I'm here, right?
Exactly. So let's take a quick time out. Want to thank you for watching our show. Give us a like, subscribe to the Hockey Writers channel. There is so much good stuff on here. We've got Blackhawks banter, Saber Scoop, Maple Leafs Lounge, Chicks and Sticks, and our recently premiered, it already became one of my favorite shows. They have the Who's Who in the women's hockey world, and you need to check it out. Of course, check out the OG show, the Hockey Writers Live with Mark Shag. Again, he's also oftentimes having some people I always talk about when Butcher Gross was on his show. I enjoyed watching that one. The obligatory, follow us on Twitter, sign up to our new morning newsletter, Morning Skate, and get the best hockey news delivered right to you every morning. And of course, comment. We see your comments, we'll respond to your comments, and stick around because we may have something to talk about here near the end of the show. That said, let's jump back to the AHL-ish for one more segment here. And Devin, you kind of got to talking, got to thinking, and you brought up an interesting point recently about an AHL team's proximity to its NHL club and what that might mean, advantages, disadvantages, depending on that. And there's a good example, again, I already plugged Iowa State, but back during my days in Ames, I would go down and catch Iowa Chops, which then became the Iowa Stars. And sure, it's right down I-35, 11-hour drive or so from the team back in the day. Obviously, they're not affiliated with Dallas anymore. I believe they're affiliated with Minnesota now. But that is kind of dating me a little bit back when they were the Chops. So I want to start with you, Devin, and talking about proximity, advantages, disadvantages to having an AHL club near or far.
So growing up in Grand Rapids, I'm old enough to remember when the Griffins were the Ottawa Senators affiliate, and that was always kind of strange to me because they're up north. What do you mean? The Red Wings are right over there. Why aren't you with them? So then when that partnership became, finalized, I was like, hell yeah, we're making sense. I think that without going through and counting every single team in their affiliate, I think that a majority of them have them within a certain proximity of themselves. I think that's just the preferential way to do it. But every now and then you get some crazy ones like the ones you just mentioned with Iowa. Tampa Bay's is Syracuse up in New York. We're kind of spoiled with this Detroit Grand Rapids partnership because, if Tuesday morning, a player from the Red Wings, maybe a goalie can't go. All they have to do is call up Grand Rapids, say, "Hey, send Calvin Pickard over here," and it's a 2-hour drive, and he'll be there in time to be back up. It's stuff like that. Like you can, at a moment's notice, have a guy. It's not like you have to scramble to get a guy in a jet to fly from New York to Florida. You can literally just get in your car and drive. And then there's also there's something to growing the game within your community. Like I said, I grew up in Grand Rapids. I've seen way more Griffins games than I have Red Wings games. And I think that going to those Griffins games helped me develop my love for the game because let's be honest, it was closer to me to get to Van Andel Arena than it was to Joe Louis Arena. And it was cheaper because the AHL is not as expensive as the NHL. Of course. When you can have, your teams, the NHL teams, prospects playing nearby, and you can have a good time for, you're getting the bang for your buck. It really helps develop love and an interest and all that stuff for the game of hockey.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I was talking about the Chicago Wolves earlier in the show, obviously growing up a Red Wings fan in Chicago. Always rough. So it was nice. It was always nice that the Wolves weren't affiliated with the Blackhawks because I didn't feel bad cheering for the Wolves then. So I never found my way out to Rockford for some reason. So Rachel, let's spin it over to you really quick. Same question in terms of proximity, especially with as close as you are right now to the Griffins organization. What do you see with that proximity and how maybe the Red Wings and the Griffins are able to work together compared to some other teams?
I've always really admired how Detroit has used their affiliates between Grand Rapids and Toledo with the Walleye at the ECHL level. And the proximity has a lot to do with that. Obviously, you're just, between two 3 hours ish, depending on which one you're going to. And obviously, like Devin said, that does help with the player transit if they need to swap someone or whatever the case might be, or even for the suits to go over to Grand Rapids and see the progress of the prospects. I've seen Stevie there multiple times. Draper's always there. Like the whole staff is always available and on hand to watch their progress. So it's a very, I don't want to say, I'm trying to think of the word for it. It's a very in-depth prospect pool. They're very attentive to it. Whereas a lot of other teams like the Chicago Wolves right now for this season, they're sharing with the Nashville Predators because Milwaukee opted out of the season. And they're also sharing with, I want to say it's the Carolina Hurricanes. Is that right? So they've got 2 different prospect pools going into one team. And obviously proximity wise, that just does not work. And it does affect the prospects and the community as well. Like Devin said, the big thing for me is that it doesn't make sense to me to have all the NHL clubs very close to the AHL clubs, because then you risk uprooting part of that organization's fan base and completely demolishing it, just like with the Ontario Reign. After last season, they were done. And so that's an entire fan base that now does not have anywhere to go. So, you know, you kind of run that risk. So you've got these long established AHL and NHL partnerships that, you know, they're getting swapped around a little bit. And though the distance might be kind of a drag for some of the players for transit, what it comes down to is the fan base, because they're the ones that pay for the tickets. They're the ones that ultimately pay the salaries that they get. So without that, then it's just, I think at this point, a poor business move. But I mean, we've been absolutely spoiled with Grand Rapids, though. I mean, I'm 10 minutes away, 2 hours away from Detroit. So it's fantastic for me and for the players. But if they were to, for any reason, move the team, I know from a fan perspective as well, because I'm still a fan at heart, it would crush me. Just so I don't see it making sense for NHL clubs to start shifting around the AHL affiliates, but it does make a difference overall with the prospect development.
Good points, and important call outs, especially centered around, like you said, the players and the fans and how that all interacts. I think that's all a super good call out. And Kyle, not sure what there might be left for you to say on the matter, but I'm going to swing it over to you anyways. Your thoughts, and you've got some experience at the lower levels too. So your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So, I mean, both Devin and Rachel brought up excellent points, and really, you know, so first off, for me, I love the aspect of the AHL being in small market areas. The Grand Rapids, the Syracuse, the San Antonios, the Charlottes, those areas that definitely can't hold down an NHL team, but they can hold down prospects as they come through and have a more intimate AHL experience. And so I don't think that should go to the wayside by any means at any time soon. But to get back to the original question, I think having your farm team close by is very important to teams. You know, Rachel said it best, like you got to be able to have that flexibility of being able to drive back and forth to see your prospects, because if you can't see them, you're not getting a true feel of if they're going to fit in your system. And when you're a plane ride away, you might be able to catch them once or twice, depending on how your road trips overlap with their road trips. But when they're down the road, it makes it a lot easier to catch them on an off day or in between, you know, roadies. So I think that eventually they'll probably try to get it closer together, or, you know, maybe put, you know, 200-mile radius on it, let's say, just to try and keep them within. But I think right now they're doing the best that they can.
So all super, super good points. And, you know, I think we need to talk about the AHL a little bit more on this show. Kyle, Devin, what do you think?
For sure.
I think we need to.
Everyone needs to talk about the AHL.
We definitely need more experts, though, if we do.
Absolutely. So awesome. So let's kind of naturally jump back to the Red Wings for one more segment. Well, I guess 2 more segments, but this one I really want to still probably focus, I'm guessing, on some of the youth. Kind of like the same question you might have seen we talked about with Grand Rapids earlier, but now looking at the Red Wings organization as a whole. Which player, in your opinion, with the Red Wings this season took the most steps forward? And disclaimer, they don't have to have played for the Wings. It could have been any prospect or any Wings player in any league. So Kyle, I kept you waiting last time, so I'm going to start with you this time.
I was very much hoping I would get to go first because I want to pick. I'm taking cider, so I want to pull him right off the shelf right away.
There's that. See that fruit? That fruit is all the way down here. Okay, yeah.
Oh, it's no longer fruit; it is cider.
Oh!
I had to. That was even lower.
I was waiting for someone to make
Bravo.
that
Can't
fun.
top that. We're done.
Sorry.
Bravo.
End of show.
See you guys next week.
No, I mean, I think everyone's going to jump on him. You know, obviously he was in the AHL last year, had a good season, couldn't play there this year and went over to the SHL and just absolutely dominated. Won junior player of the year. I think every single Wings fan is just itching to get him over here for the training camp and likely opening night. And so thank you for letting me go first. I'm going with cider.
It's no longer fruit, it's cider. Will live in infamy. That was
I think
phenomenal.
that should be the title. That should be the title of the show.
Well,
I love it. I love it.
So now that he's taken the easy ones, Rachel, who's impressed you most in the Wings organization this year?
Okay, so I'm going to cheat and I'm going to say two that I know no one else is going to pick. So I'm going to just go for it. Kyle Aucoin. He was just drafted. He's been playing. So I watched the Muskegon Lumberjacks very closely. They're a USHL team who they're a 50-minute drive from me. So super easy to get to. So we're there every single weekend. He is one player that I was a little apprehensive about just because of his stature. He's not a big kid at all. I was he was a later round pick. So I was like, well, it could be a couple of years before we see much of anything. Well, he gets sent to the Muskegon Lumberjacks. Which obviously Chris Draper's kid Keenan, who we also drafted, played there for some time too. So they're familiar with the organization. He has been probably the most fun to watch for me this season, just because he had started off. My expectations were really low, to be honest, for him. I wasn't expecting much, and he just completely floored me all season long. Every single game, he seemed to be getting better and better and better. His board play, his push, his confidence is just like he ended his season. He's not a massive point producer. He had 10 points in 28 games played. And that's with a truncated season too. So I think given a full regular season, he's going to do phenomenal. But he really impressed me, just his drive. I'm big into the attitude and the demeanor of a player, because I think it plays massively into their actual production and how they grow and develop. And he's very teachable. So that was really exciting. Sure. And then I'm going to cheat and do my second one. We actually just signed him, Kirill Tuchayev. So he is a Russian that we're pulling over. He had kind of an iffy season. He was swapped around, ended up in Belarus, and his production this season just blew my mind. So it was not something I was expecting either, because I remember when he was drafted, again, a smaller player, and it had me scratching my head. I was like, Steve, what are you doing with these little guys? But I have to remember, he obviously drafted some big dudes too, but I have to remember too, and I'm sure everyone else does, but these are just kids. It takes 2 or 3 seasons to really come into their own, and he kind of skipped a beat and he just dominated in Belarus, and he did a great job, and I'm really excited to see how he translates that over to AHL next year or next season, and we get another Russian, and who doesn't want another Russian? I think we should just bring back the Russian 5, honestly. Recreate that, but I know I did too. I probably shouldn't have, but
that's okay. We'll allow it. The judges will allow it, and I think everybody will agree, between the Russians and the Swedes, we'll take as many as we can get.
Oh,
so
100%, yes.
Absolutely. Devin, over to you. Who's impressed you most this year?
Real quick, bold of you, Rachel, to assume I wasn't going to say Tiatayev. I'm kidding. I wasn't going to. So
you got to learn to speak Russian and say the name first.
Yeah, true. I'm gonna say one, but then I'm gonna actually talk about another one that I actually really think is my pick. I want to throw out Jonathan Bergeron, because he finally was healthy and he took some big steps this season. But my player that I'm actually super proud of and excited to see him going in next season because of the steps he took this year was Michael Rasmussen. He needed to have a big year, and he did. He crossed the threshold of being a good AHL player to being a legitimate NHL player this season, and that was observable. I think that the next step for him now is to start producing some offense. But judging by the strides that he took this season, I have confidence that he can get there. So kudos to you, Rasmussen.
I will do rapid fire two. Number one, Zadina. Was just really impressed with his playmaking ability. I thought, I think the goals will come. Looks like he's starting to get more comfortable, but his playmaking ability really impressed me this year. He just always seemed to find the open man. He always seemed to set up a nice play down low where there's created a good scoring opportunity. So was excited to see that. And then Devin, you took my boy Berggren. I've been high on him all year. It's amazing. He's healthy. When he's healthy and he goes to the net, the chances that he creates, I think he tore it up in the SHL this year, and I'm really looking forward to see the kid. But that's no secret. I think I talk about him every week. So good stuff, and I really appreciate the insight. So
Yes.
Let's do something a little bit fun. Last week's episode, actually, we had a comment left by viewer Sean Evans. Sean, big shout out. Really appreciate you checking out the show. Sean is a lifelong Wings fan and in no uncertain terms stated his disappointment with Captain Dylan Larkin. And when you look at it at face value, there's certainly some merit there. Let's talk about this season, 23 points, minus 14. Last season, 53 points, minus 21. He had a 73-point season. Am I remembering that right? 3 years ago, kind of where he peaked. Been regression. Looks like on paper potentially been regressing. So let's get your thoughts on that, and we'll let our guests go first here. Rachel, what have your impressions been with Dylan Larkin his first year as captain, and is there any cause for concern with the way he's been playing?
I would think the whole team has a cause for concern. So and it's no disrespect. I grew up a Wings fan. I absolutely love the team and organization, but I don't think that Dylan Larkin's lack of production is entirely his fault. And now I'm gonna kind of hedge that by saying, yes, it's lackluster. It is regressing. It is not where it should be and what he's capable of. But I do think a lot of that has to do with the team around him. So being that the team is now fully in the rebuild, Steve has hit reset. This next season is going to be intense. This offseason is going to be very hard to handle in a lot of ways. And I think the structure of the lines and the team and those around Larkin are going to be changing dramatically. Now, the whole reason you're on a line is to have those guys help you out. You're not going to get points if the whole team isn't communicating, if your whole line isn't communicating or working well. And there's been a lot of shifting this season. And it's been a very unpredictable season. Now, it's not making excuses for him. He has the ability to do have 70, 80 point seasons. He is very capable of doing that. But I think he also needs to fully embrace his captain role. So I think that part is what falls on him. I don't know if it's like a mental thing, but there could be a million reasons he's not producing. But in my mind, kind of taking a step back and looking at the whole team as in its entirety, they're not supporting each other in the way that they need to be and producing the way that they need to be. And so I think that could play a lot into it. Now, hopefully this next season, we have a few more pieces put in place and then he can really step up to the plate. But right now, I think the largest contributing factor would be the fact the team as a whole needs to get better.
I think all super good points, super valid call outs. Devin, over to you. Your thoughts on the captain? Current captain, I should say. That's sacrilegious if I say it like that. I can't say it like that. I'm sorry, Stevie. I'm sorry. I corrected myself before anybody else said anything. Okay.
I think that the Red Wings general manager is fine. Thank you very much. I am not worried about Larkin. I'm not worried about him. I wanted to say it all, but I am worried a little bit. I'm not worried in that I think he'll rebound. I'm not thinking that this is like a sign that he is all of a sudden a third line player. I think that, like Rachel said, there is a lot to the fact that there's just not a lot of talent around him. Many times this season, he was kind of off on an island where he was the only player capable of doing anything. And he kind of was put in a position where he had to do it himself. And as great as Dylan Larkin is, he isn't Connor McDavid and he can't always do it himself. Like I said, I'm not worried about long-term. But I do think that next season, it will go a long way towards a long and fruitful career for him, that he has a good season. So I think that Eiserman and whoever the coach is need to think real hard about making sure that Larkin is in a position to have a strong season next year from a stats perspective. I have no issues with him as the captain. I think he did a fantastic job in that regard this season. But as for his production on the ice, it's got to get better. I don't think anyone will disagree with that.
Good points, Devin. Kyle, over to you. Cause for concern with Dylan Larkin?
So I don't see any cause for concern right now, and I'm going to throw this out there. So the sign to me of a good captain is someone that's going to come in and set the tone and set the example for the rest of the organization and show the right way to play, the right way to show up, the right way to be a professional. And by all means, I have to say Dylan Larkin did a fantastic job of doing that this season.
Absolutely.
He only got to play with Bertuzzi for 9 games. And if you look at the line combinations that were put out this year, the Red Wings had the most by far. And no matter who Larkin was playing with, he constantly was able to make his line better, make his teammates better, and get them to have that extra competitive drive. We weren't a great team, but we were competitive all season. We were in most games. There were a few we got blown out, but even in those games, you never really saw the fight go out of them. And I think that is what sets the tone as being a good captain.
So I agree. Another thing to tag on there, especially last season, such an abysmal season in so many different ways, but who was always at his locker ready to answer the questions? You know, he didn't shy away from the media. He was always there to answer the questions. And Kyle, to your point, that's setting the tone for the team, for accountability, for the type of team that you're going to be. And the only other thing I want to say about this is I feel like, having watched Larkin this season, it seemed like he was always trying to make the extra play.
Yeah.
I feel like his numbers were a little bit lower. Wouldn't necessarily want to call it pressing per se, but it just seems like he actually had really good puck protection. I always felt like anytime he was skating with the puck, I felt safe. I almost had like a warm fuzzy back, like when Datsuk had the puck. It felt safe. But then there would be well, in just the warm fuzzy feeling. I'm not making any other comparisons just yet. But it just seemed like then there'd be a trying to make something happen, one too many passes, a sloppy pass, a careless pass through the middle, something like that. And I think experience and a little more talent around him will help clean that up too. So everybody, super good points on that. And, I think we can all kind of agree it's been an interesting season. Let's see how he moves forward from there. So let's have a little fun to close out our show today. So we're going to do a true lightning round, no pun intended, however. I want to know from each of you, no explanation, just a team name, who your Stanley Cup winner is this year. And Rachel, we will start with you.
Carolina Hurricanes.
Kyle.
Taylor Hall.
We're going Bruins. Brutal. Brutal. Devin. Oh,
The Vegas Golden Knights.
The Vegas Golden Knights. And then I am going to have to put this on for the team that I'm about to say is going to win. Because you can only wear a hat like this when you say, unfortunately, I think the Colorado Avalanche are going to win the Stanley Cup this year. So to my friends Jim and Justin, who I hope are watching, this is for you. And I think this may be the year of the President's Trophy since 2012, 2013, when the Hawks did it. This may be the year we see the President's Trophy winners take home the cup. Did you get
that fact from the morning skate?
I did get that fact. There's a chance I may have researched that fact.
There's a chance you might have wrote it.
Subscribe to our newsletter. What fun this was, Rachel, a million times over. Can't thank you enough for joining us today. You are welcome back anytime. We'll always keep a locker stall open for you. So hope we haven't scared you away and you come back soon. We want to thank you, the viewer, for joining us as well. Give us a like, subscribe, comment, share, find us on Spotify, tweet us. If you do leave a comment on the YouTube channel, we will respond and probably give you a shout out the following week. So that's our show. Thank you for watching and enjoy.